This DJNTV show is sponsored by DJ Event Planner, Electra Voice, DJ Trivia and DJ Bingo, ProX Direct, Odyssey Cases, Perfect Portals, Instant DJ Requests, and our DJNTV Insiders. This is John Young from DJNTV. Thanks for watching. Hey, this is John Young here from DJNTV, and tonight is DJNTV Training Night. That's right, it is that time of the quarter where you're going to get a night of some great content to hopefully help you improve your DJ business. Tonight we're going to be talking about planning, wedding planning, and communicating and connecting with your couples. And we've got 3 different interviews we're going to be sharing with you tonight. We've got our host, Ron Ruth, who's going to be handling our interviews this month. And Ron's going to be talking to Peter Mary, and then he's going to be talking to Zach and Keisha Anderson, and then he'll be wrapping up tonight with Michael Lenstra. Peter Mary is kind of based. He's been around the country. He does shows from East Coast to West Coast and everywhere in between. But he's kind of located in the Kansas City area now. That's where home base for him. Then you've got Zach and Keisha, which are coming out of Fargo, North Dakota. They run a system or a company up there. And then Mike Lenstra is coming to us from Iowa. So you're going to get kind of a sampling this time from kind of the middle of the country with our talent that'll be talking to you tonight and sharing some of their experiences. So we're going to jump right into it because we've got 3 really good interviews and we have kind of a limited amount of time. So links for our sponsors are down in the description of this video. Please show them some love because without them, this would not happen. And even our DJNTV Insiders are a big part of why these events can happen. And our next one will be coming up in the fall. We'll have 2 of them in the fall for you guys to be able to check out, also hitting a variety of different topics for your business. But it's all about the sponsors and the insiders who help to make it so we can be bringing these shows to you on a regular basis. So go show the sponsors some love. Say thank you to the insiders if you're not one of them. And if you are or want to become one of them, DJNTVtraining.com is the main site where you can go out to do that and become part of that. So without any further ado, we're going to jump into our first interview tonight. I'm going to turn it over to Ron.
Well, good afternoon or good evening, depending on what time of day, or even good morning. I don't know. Whenever you're watching this video. Could be any time. Yep. So I'm really, I would say honored, but that's not quite right. I would say I'm like thrilled. I didn't quite fit it, but I am going to say I am so happy. There you go, happy. That's the word I was looking for. I'm so happy to be joined by my friend, Peter Mary, and I say friend, and I mean not just friend. He's my mentor. He's my advisor. He's been 101 different things to me over the past almost 18 years that we've known each other. I met Peter when he was first president of the ADJA, National Association of Disc Jockeys of America. Is that right? Mm-hmm. God, it's been so long.
American Disc Jockey Association.
See, even you had to look up and kind of think about what the heck was the name of that thing.
Something.
So, anyway, so I met him way back then when my business was, I wasn't doing things quite the way that I should have been doing them, and with his help, I was able to not only do things much, much better, but also increase my bottom line. So, having said that, hey, welcome, Peter.
Thank you. When I woke up this morning, I said, "What can I do today to make Ron happy?"
That's right.
So,
and I'm so glad that you were able to figure that out.
Check that off my list.
Yeah, because otherwise
Great.
we'd still be sitting here trying to figure out what the heck we're going to talk about. So, in continuing my series of past, present, and future weddings, Peter and I are going to talk a little bit about his past and where he came from, and then we'll talk a little bit about what he's doing now to make his brides happy, more than happy, make them thrilled. And then we'll talk briefly about how he sees the future of not just weddings, but wedding planning in general. So, Peter, why don't we start with the basics? Let's talk a bit about when did you start your business and where? Well, let's just start there. You go. I don't have to prompt you.
Okay.
Because once I buckle up, folks, because it takes a while.
Okay, so my first official paid wedding was on July 4th of 1992. I was working for a DJ company. I got hired with a very short interview and put out there was very little training. Mm-hmm. And after showing up at that wedding with no training on weddings and third string equipment that was falling apart and the caterer complaining that it didn't know what I was doing, the owner of the company who sent me out decided that I was now going to be his assistant for the next 6 months.
Okay.
And so I did that, and I watched him spin records, literally, and I carried 5 cases of records into every event for him. And I watched him do the same things over and over again. And so after about a year and a half of that, I decided I had enough. I walked away. I worked in the club business for about 6 months. And then I started my own company, which was Last Dance Entertainment in July of 94.
And where were you?
Southern California. Yeah, that's the wonderful marketplace where it flows with milk and honey, and all the clients are willing to pay more just because it's Southern California. That's not actually true.
Where everybody's tan.
Yeah. Well, see, having grown up in Seattle, it was a little different for me because up there people don't tan; they just rust. But I started my own company in the summer of 94, and one of the things that I determined to do to be different was I wanted to focus on creating something unique to each couple. I felt like what I had been doing working for the other person was very much a cookie cutter. Mm-hmm. We would ask 5 questions leading up to the day, and then at the day we'd ask 20 questions, and the bride and groom would be deer in the headlights, not knowing how to respond, which then left us the capability to do what we normally do for every wedding because they're all the same. And I wanted to customize and personalize the weddings. So I had some ideas about how to do it. When I started, I think I did okay. It wasn't great. Took some time to learn. Took some time to figure out how to really make it something unique for them. But I spent a lot of time on creating something that was focused around who they were and what their style was.
Okay, so let's kind of delve a little deeper into that planning process when you first started your business. Explain that process. What was it like?
Initially, when I first got started, a lot of my focus was on putting together kind of an order of what special songs were going to be happening for special moments. It was very music focused. Mm-hmm. And over the course of a couple of years, I started noticing that some of the other wedding pros that I was working with, and I call them wedding pros because you taught me that. Don't call them vendors, call them wedding professionals. I started noticing that they were asking for some kind of a timeline or script. And more often than not, they didn't have a coordinator who was doing that. And I started to recognize that maybe that was something that I could do as well. And not only did it make my job easier and make me feel more prepared, but it also made the other pros I was working with feel better because they knew what we were in for. And so I started actually putting together full agendas and scripts. Here's what's going to happen in what order. And then eventually I even started putting timestamps on it. And I was nervous about that because I didn't want people to feel like we're trapped into this set time frame. I didn't want to spend all night looking at my watch. But I realized through the years of experience that I was accruing that I knew how long certain things would take. So I could put in estimates of what it would take, and they trusted my judgment on that. And more often than not, what I actually projected turned out to run almost like clockwork.
Well, and it's funny because that's one of the things I learned from you was putting together an agenda with those timestamps. And I would just tell my brides and grooms that, you know, this is just kind of a close estimation of how things will go. At no point is anybody going to look at their watch and say, hey, it's this time, you should be doing this. No, we let you know what's going on based on what your guests are doing at that particular moment.
Right.
So okay. So it sounds to me like in the beginning, your learning curve was based on observation from watching what other like other wedding professionals were doing. Would that be good?
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. And there was also a little bit of a learning curve that came from having things go wrong, you know, and you can only do so much to be prepared, but then you see little things go wrong. And in my mind, I would do that little bit where I go, it wasn't me. I didn't cause that. But then I started waiting, thinking back on it and going, okay, so maybe it wasn't technically my fault. But if I send everybody over to watch them cut the cake and there's no knife and there's no plate and there's no napkin, that moment's going to stall. And I can either point a finger and blame the caterer or blame the coordinator, or I can say, hey, I'm the person with the microphone who just told everybody this is ready. And how hard would it have been for me to have double checked that earlier in the night and get that resolved earlier in the night? And so I started adopting a philosophy of taking ownership for the success of the event. And I actually made what I call a checklist of all the things that could feasibly go wrong. You know, I didn't include alien abduction or, you know, meteors crashing into the party, but things that could reasonably go wrong. And I'd make a list of what those things were. And then that allowed me to make a checklist of things to look out for to keep them from going wrong. And it was little things like making sure that the parents who were going to be involved in special dances were actually in the room before that happened. And they were told ahead of time, this is about to happen, because there's nothing worse than watching the bride and groom finish their first dance. DJ announces the father-daughter dance and dad's in the bathroom. And I got to witness that as a guest. Yeah, exactly. I got to witness that as a guest, and it's awkward and it's discomforting and it's a big stall. And I've watched DJs literally call out dad like it was his fault. Well, did he give him a heads up?
Yeah.
Did you tell him it was coming? So that philosophy of going, what can I do to prevent these mishaps, started leading to a much more successful events for my clients, and allowing me to walk in feeling even more confident that I was going to deliver what they wanted and more.
Well, I know that a part of that checklist also is making sure, even in advance, that the other wedding professionals you're going to be working with know what's going to happen that evening, so that if there's any conflicts to their timeline, what they need to accomplish, that you know about in advance. As an example, the photographer says, well, when can I take them out for sunset photos?
Right.
You know, I would much rather deal with that in advance and try to figure out how we're going to make that happen. If we're going to make it happen, what's the best way to make it happen without them just disappearing and being gone because we know sometimes I'll only be 10 minutes with it, and it turns into a half hour or 40 minutes or whatever the case may be. So it's best to be prepared for those moments in advance so that you don't have that issue.
But now you're opening up a whole can of worms, which is sometimes that means you have to talk to those people in advance,
right,
and confer and make sure you're on the same page. And they don't always respond. They're not always ready to collaborate. But if you can make that effort ahead of time, it does once again pay off well.
Well, and I even had a photographer one time tell me, I've been doing this for umpteen years. I don't need to have a checklist, or I don't need to know this or that. Yeah, hey, that's fine. If you're that good, then you go for it, buddy.
Well, the one you mentioned that caught me was the group photo with the sunset, right?
Yeah.
I had a wedding where I was literally starting to announce the first dance, and the photographer came up and said, "We need everybody outside right now for a group photo." And I found myself kicking into Adam Sandler from Happy Gilmore, you know, something that could have been brought to my attention.
Yeah.
All upset. I'm like, why? But, you know, you got to stuff that down and instead kick into performance mode, which was to tell everybody to get up and put on a conga song and have them do a conga line outside. Right. And got the whole room outside in under a minute and a half flat. Right. They couldn't believe I got them out that quick. I'm like, well, it would have been even easier if we'd known in advance and had it part of the solution. So, yeah.
So, all right. So you've kind of touched on it a little bit, so forgive me if my question is redundant. So where was your biggest aha moment where you went, you know, I can take this to a whole nother level? When did that happen?
I would have to say that one of those things for me was when I was covering a wedding for another DJ. And this was like the last time that I did that. So it would have been in the late 90s. My business was just starting to pick up, and I had a friend who asked me to cover a job. So I said, okay, I'm going to cover the job. I'm going to be the stand-in DJ. And the bride and groom walked up to me before the reception started and handed me a couple of sheets of paper. And on them were paragraphs about each wedding party person. And I went, oh, and they were like, yeah, we want you to read that when you bring in the wedding party. And it was one of those moments that I just kind of went, wow, that's a lot. And once again, wish I'd known about it earlier. But as I looked at it, I thought, you know what? This actually makes a lot of sense, because all I've been doing up to this point is what my friend Lucas likes to call the shouting of the names, you know? Coming in next, here's John and Sandy. Nobody knows who John and Sandy are, right? And so I realized that if I tell people who these people are to the bride and groom, it could be a lot of fun. And so that led to me interviewing my couples and actually letting them write a short intro. And then that led to one more epiphany, which is one that I did that went way too long. And I had a guest come up to me and say, that was awesome, but way too long. And that's when I took ownership and said, I'll gather the content, but I'm going to write it. And I'm going to make it shorter depending on the length of the wedding party. And so those two things were major game changers for me, because then that allowed me to make sure every single party I ever did from that moment forward started off with the most personal, unique, and fun introduction that just informed everybody in the room, you're about to have the time of your lives tonight. And if you can put that in their minds at the beginning of the night, anytime you get on the mic after that, you have their undivided attention. They're going to do whatever you need them to do. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it leads to better dancing.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, I would. I forgot what I was going to say. This is like one of those blank moments. I'm old. Forgive me. So yes, I agree. And the cool thing about it is that when you're actually meeting, I know what I was going to say. When you're first sitting down with a couple and you're in that sales consult mode. That's a great differentiator from the weddings that they've always been to versus a wedding that they can have. Right. Their wedding versus all the others. Because I usually ask them, tell me about the introductions. What was that like for you? And they'll say, well, they just, they just announced everybody by name. They did a little dance. And then what happened? Well, they went and they sat down behind the head table. Okay. And then when the bride and groom came in, then what happened? Well, the bride and groom came in, everybody stood up, they applauded. And then the bride and groom went and sat down. I mean, so, there was really not a whole lot to any of that.
Right.
And the other cool thing that you taught me, and I think you learned from someone else, is that it's a lot of fun if you can have the bride and groom in the room for those introductions.
That was another game changer for me. I learned that from Andy Austin in Texas.
Yeah. And I won't take credit for it either, which I normally would, but you've already said Andy taught it. But Andy who? But I mean, and most DJs would go, what? The bride and groom in the room?
Yeah.
For the introductions, that's unheard of. No,
I had that same conversation just about a week ago with a couple I'm doing a wedding for up in Iowa, the end of June.
Yeah,
and they were talking about how much fun this would be, and they said, it's too bad we're not going to be in the room. And I said, why not? And they're like, because we come in last. That's the way it works. I'm like, I know. I used to think the same thing. If you'd like, there's another way to do it. There's all kind. And I said the real truth is, I've spent so much time trying to develop unique ways to kick off a party that I did a whole seminar called 10 Layers Deep that just showed all the different kinds of layers of personalization and fun you can put into a wedding introduction to make it unique and stand out. And so these days, I don't come in with a predetermined idea of what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. You remember the one you and I did together back in August? We had 3 groomsmen who couldn't make it.
Right.
And so what did we do? We got painter sticks and put their faces on the sticks and had stand-ins hold their faces because they wanted to videotape it and send it to them.
Yeah, right.
Let's do it.
And we still did the personalized introduction as well. Yeah. And you could tell from those static faces on those sticks that they were just laughing.
Oh, they were.
Laughing.
Yeah, they were
really. But the audience, the guests, really enjoyed that.
Oh, yeah.
We still incorporated them as a part of that event. That was a lot of fun. So I have learned. I mean, it's the crazy thing is you're talking about stuff. I'm going, man. I have learned so much from watching you and listening to you and to all of these adventures you've been on with the making an event so unique. So let's kind of jump ahead a little bit to today, to today's process. So what do you do today outside? And I know you talked about doing the wedding party introductions. When it comes to the wedding planning part of this, how does that process work? How many times do you meet with the couple? How much time are you investing in this? Let's talk about all of that.
Sure. So on average, when I'm doing a ceremony and reception, it's usually 2 to 3 meetings, sometimes more. If it's a location I've not worked at before, very often we'll incorporate an actual site visit together so we can walk the property and I know where I'm loading in and setting up and we can discuss that. Sometimes that's even part of the sales meeting, which is great. And then the reason for doing 2 to 3 planning sessions is because there's a lot of detail to be hashed out. And in the first planning session, which I normally start 3 months out, the reason I normally start it 3 months out is because then I'm ahead of everybody else in the game. So I'm usually ahead of the coordinator, I'm ahead of the caterer, I'm ahead of the location, and I can help set the tone for what they want to do to make it unique. And then they can hand that to the rest of their team if they want to, without having to come in and somebody's already given them a preset agenda that they like to do their way all the time. And then when I walk into that first meeting to start that planning, I try to walk in with a blank slate. I have a bunch of ideas of things they may or may not want to do, traditions and non-traditional things that they may or may not want to include. And we'll walk through each one of those things and figure out which ones they like and don't like. And when they don't like them, why don't you like them? What is it you don't like about it? Because that's going to help me get better at throwing ideas their way. And then once we figured out which events are going to be included in our night, then the next step is figuring out what order would fit best for them to do them. Because I could do the same order of events at every wedding if I wanted to. But I've done so many different orders over the last probably 15 years at least, where my clients have been given the freedom to pick and choose and design it the way they want to. I've done weddings where they come in for the grand entrance and cut the cake. Very common in the Midwest. Hardly ever happens out in the East Coast or the West Coast. I've done weddings where they come in and they do their first dance right away. I've done weddings where they come in and they do the toast right after the grand entrance. So there's all kinds of timing issues of things that can be done early or late or later on. And really, my job isn't to come in and say, here's what works, here's what I always do. My job is to come in and go, what do you want to do? And how do you picture it unfolding? And if they give me something that I know isn't going to work, I don't see it as my job to say no. I see it as my job to go, how can we find a way to make it work? Or how can we find a way to create something that you're still going to like, even though that might be a little difficult to pull off? As Randy Bartlett likes to call it, it's the difference of working with your client rather than working for your client.
Right.
They don't tell me what they want and I just take orders.
It's collaboration.
Exactly. I'm going to work with them to try to come up with a strategy that's going to fit. But that first meeting is all about putting that game plan together. And I don't care if they don't have songs picked out. I don't care if they don't know the lineup for the wedding party yet. I don't care if they don't have their background music picked out. None of that matters. What matters is building the framework, kind of like building a house, right? We're going to put up the framing. But then during the next meeting, we're actually going to put the sheetrock on and start painting the walls and putting the details on it. And so that's where we're going to get down to the nitty gritty of what song do you want? Why'd you choose that song? Is there anything you'd like to do to make it more personal? Would you like to make it shorter? And then what do you want to do to introduce the wedding party in the most creative and fun way that matches your style? And what kind of an ending do you want to have? And do you want to do one of those new fake endings and then come in and do an after party? And I don't like the fake endings, but I'll do it.
I'm not a fan.
Fake endings still wind up getting a bunch of people going, oh, it's over, we can leave now. So, but whatever fits for them best is what we're going to work on, and we're going to pull that off and deliver it.
So, one of the great things that I've learned from you in this process is that the more involved you are in helping them, the more they feel that you are as concerned in the word I'm looking for, the more they feel that you are just as interested in the success of the event as they are, the more likely they are to be able to get you all of the information that you need in a timely manner. You're not waiting until that day before to get the music list. You're not waiting. I mean, it's not to say that it doesn't happen. Sure. But 98% of the time, you're going to get everything you need well in advance so that when you do sit down, nobody wants to waste anybody's time.
Right.
So, you know, the reason we're going to have, and you spell it out for them. Here's what we're going to talk about. And this is how long this meeting is going to take. So they know how much time they have to set aside. I mean, you are the one thing that I told my clients, was something I learned from you, is I'm a high maintenance DJ. I am going to want to spend as much time with you as it takes to make sure that you have the wedding that you want. It doesn't mean that I'm going to be, interfering in your life, but it just means that I'm going to invest whatever time it's going to take in order for us to pull this off.
Yeah.
So if it means an extra meeting or something, then by all means, let's go about doing that.
And if they're willing to invest that time with me ahead of time, what I guarantee them is a much better result on the day of, and more of a feeling of no stress and peace and comfort, knowing it's all going to happen the way they want it to. Because by the time we get done with the planning process, I see a very common physical reaction that my clients have. At the end of the last planning session, we've got an agenda mapped out. It's all detailed. They can see how it's going to work, and they literally go, oh.
Yeah.
Because they can see it. They see that it's coming together and it's a good plan. You know, they can see they're in good hands. And you're right. When they feel like I'm as invested as they are in making it fun, it's easier to trust. It's easier to give the information we need to do the job right. And the best part is when you develop that relationship, the day of, you'll have people coming up to you at the wedding.
How long have you known? Yeah.
Right. And they'll come, oh, we heard about you. We can't wait. We're going to have so much fun tonight. There's nothing better than people showing up to a party expecting to have fun because they've heard how much fun it's going to be from the bride and groom. Right. So you might as well be like another Randy Bartlettism. He likes to stack the deck. Yeah, that's called stacking the deck in your favor.
Right.
You do that work ahead of time. You've now stacked the deck that you've got all kinds of cards you can play at just the right moment to make the right impact. And it's going to be amazing.
Well, when you make your customer, or when you make your client feel valued, special, important, as though the experience has been designed solely for them, then of course they're going to feel a personal connection to you rather than that of a vendor.
Right.
You know, this is my DJ Peter. There's a different mindset to it. And a lot of times at the end of the night, I'm one that always tried to get a photo at the end of the night with the couple. And a lot of times it was the couple coming to me going, hey, we want to make sure that we get a photo with you. And sometimes they'd even do it while they still had their photographer there. So, so they get quality photos that they can hang on their wall.
It goes on the front of the
it goes. Yeah. It goes right there on the front of the yeah.
That's what I always tell myself anyway.
Yeah. Well, and I think we all learned. I mean, I don't know who it was that taught this lesson, but not only are you the DJ for the event or the entertainment for the event, you are really in almost every photo of the event. I mean, not every photo, but you're in a lot of the photos.
What I'm creating is in the photos.
Right.
Yeah.
But a lot of times our faces are in those photos as well.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. And that a lot of times when the photographer's taking photos, our faces are there.
My favorites though are when I look back at the wedding photos, whether I'm in them or not, when I see people laughing, that's when I know I did my job right.
Right.
Yeah, anybody can get pictures of people dancing, and they always look awkward, don't they? Because they always look like they're in mid right? They always look, but the laughter shots, oh, those are gold.
Or no, I'll go one step further. Father crying during the father's.
Yes.
But yeah, then you go, yeah, baby. I know what I was doing for that. So, what would be the greatest advice that you might want to give to someone coming into this industry now as a young DJ?
Sure. I would say number one would be focus on the art of what you do. We've talked a little bit about the science side of it, the planning, the preparation, putting all the notes on paper, getting it all planned out right. But when you can focus on the talent side of what you do, and I don't just mean mixing great. Mixing great's fun. I've got one of them newfangled controllers, still learning how to mix on it and do some amazing stuff with it. But learning how to, on the fly, be able to handle anything thrown your way and turn it into a golden moment rather than turning it into a panic moment is something that comes from talent and training and confidence that only comes through going out there and treating what you do as not only a profession, but as an art form that can be improved and trained upon. And so take improv classes. I followed Ron's example and watched him taking improv classes. I watched him after all the years I've known him start getting funnier and sharper. I'm like, what in the heck? So I had to go take improv classes with him. He did. He got funnier and sharper. It was really true. It's not an insult.
You have to tell my wife that.
It was true. He absolutely did. And thanks to him, I've taken over 100 hours of improv training myself. Take a stand-up comedy class. I took one of those years ago, and I've actually been thinking about signing up to do one again now. It's been about 20 years since I took a stand-up comedy class at the Improv in California. But that little class, 7 weeks, it taught me how to write and deliver humor. And humor at a wedding can be so powerful if it's appropriate. And you know who tells you it's appropriate? The bride and groom. They're the ones that help you define that. You got to know your audience, right? So anything like that can help you stretch those muscles. You can take performance training from Mark Farrell. Bill Herman has a course. I've done one for grand entrances with Liz Daly called Make It Fun Workshop. It's a lot of fun.
Right.
Make It Grand Workshop, actually. Make It Grand Workshop. Forgot the name of my own.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah. See, I'm getting a little bit of the gray hair too. So, but work those muscles, and get out there and treat what you do as something that can be improved upon constantly by taking the training that's going to stretch you and make you more confident. So when somebody throws you a curveball, you're going to be okay. It's not going to cause a meltdown. It's not going to cause a panic. The last thing you need to see either one of us do on a mic at a wedding is start to panic, right? Especially if you are introducing a wedding party member and their name isn't on the script.
Not me, guys. Not me. I would never do that. That intro turned into, you know who you are. Come on
over here. Well, I looked frantically through the ceremony to find the name, and
that was awesome.
Told the bride 6 months later, you realize I didn't have his name on there? She said, no, we didn't realize at all. I'm like, okay.
So I think something I want to, you started to touch on it a little bit. I know Peter has, and I should have probably started with all this. I mean, I don't know how many conferences you've spoken at about entertainment and how many workshops you have, because you got Make It Grand, you have the professional process. Did you have other workshops?
We did like a one-day version of Make It Grand that we called owning. I think it was owning the room or something like that. But I'd have to go back and look. I've also do a 7-hour class on audio editing with Adobe Photoshop.
Yeah, I remember that.
Not Photoshop, Adobe Audition.
But the thing is that about all of these is that I don't care how good you are, how good you say, and really it should be, I don't care how good you think you are. If you go, you could be out there every weekend and people could come up to you and say, you're the best DJ ever. Training can make you even better than what you already are. And I know that sounds silly, but and there's all sorts. You talked about Mark Farrell, you talked about Bill Herman. There are still conferences. There's Photo Booth Expo, which I understand now has the Mobile Beat wing of the DJ conference.
Mobile Entertainers Expo.
There's Midwest DJs Live, which is coming up here in the near future. There are all sorts of opportunities. And as Peter said, there are opportunities to do things outside of just the DJ world to learn how to better your craft, improv. The one thing I learned from you, I never took stand-up, but when I was writing my wedding party intros, I had a tendency to be a little wordy, and you told me I needed to learn how to get to the funny faster, which is something you learned from improv. I beg your pardon, from stand-up comedy. Peter has, by the way, just a little plug. He does have DVDs of almost everything you've ever done in the way of workshops. And where can they find those?
That would be thefunweddingexperts.com.
The fun wedding experts.
Go to the products page, you'll see everything there.
.com, right. Right. And I think there's when I'm going to kind of go off the beaten path here for just a moment. I promise I'll get right back. But when Peter first came to Kansas City to speak to our local ADJA chapter back in 2005, I just happened to be at Disney World that week. And so a friend of mine recorded Peter's presentation, which was, it seemed like, I want to say it was close to about 3 hours. No, it was.
Might have been.
It really was. Because I remember I ran out of tape and had to do more tape, and you had an intermission and the whole.
I was sharing everything I knew about sales, so it was a lot.
So when I got back, I was the lucky one because I got that video and I watched it over and over and over again. Most of it had to do with sales. How do you go about presenting yourself to a bride and groom in that first? And because I was suffering with my sales consult, my booking rate was nothing. And Peter taught in that. And the funny thing is that before I saw this video, I was out there trying to do the Mark Farrell thing, and I just raised my rates. And people would say, well, why are you so much higher than other DJs? And I would say, because, and they would not book me, surprisingly. And it got really, really frustrating that was happening over and over and again. And I watched the video on sales, which you have a video, don't you, called
a few of them, yeah.
A pillar something.
I've got better consultations bring better bookings, which was what you saw.
Right.
And I've got another one called showcasing your value.
That pillars one, I'm just going to call it.
Well, that was the marketing. That was the first one, 6 Pillars of Wedding Marketing.
Yeah.
So.
That's a good video. And I assure you, if you're struggling with how can I get more money for the service that I provide, and increase my bottom line, that video will tell you. Now, the other thing though, I got to feel like I'm on a QVC.
Product placement.
Product placement, yeah. So he wrote a book too. I don't know if you can see, called The Best Wedding Reception Ever. And if you don't believe he wrote this book, go out with him some evening and he'll let you know. He tells the servers, he tells the guy that parks the car, I wrote a book.
Not sure.
So anyway, The Best Wedding Reception Ever. I'm not kidding you. Where's it still available?
It's still available on iBooks and Amazon in Kindle format, but it's also in hard print, available on Amazon. You can get it at most Barnes and Nobles. They're still reprinting copies of it. It's not hardback anymore. It's now paperback.
I know that, but I was lucky. I got a hardback copy of it.
And if you go to the products page of the funweddingexperts.com, you can also see information on how to contact a publisher, because some people have actually taken to buying caseloads of it and giving it to their clients. I did that in the beginning,
yes.
So when they book you, you give them that, and it's now a primer to help them in their planning process.
And the cool thing about this is not only is it Peter's thoughts on weddings, but he also reached out to a number of wedding DJs across the country and got them to contribute little stories or ideas to this book, which I have an idea or two in here. I'm not sure how many. But anyway, I would highly advise this book. Start with the what was it, 6 Pillars?
That's on marketing.
Start with that. And then while you're listening to that, read this at the same time. And I can assure you, you're going to go, oh man, I never thought of that idea. I never thought of that idea. You don't know how many ideas. So
that book though has, I give it to every single client who meets with me, whether they book me or not. And I tell them that it has 240 creative ideas to make a wedding more fun. And that's when I tell them, but don't do them all, your guests will hate you.
Yeah, you can't, you can't do them all. But I mean, there's a lot of valuable information within that book of ideas that you can go, wow. And again, all of those ideas are designed not only to make a wedding unique and more personal and all of those things, but in the end, we're in business, and it's also all of those things allow you to build your bottom line.
Yep.
And
there's absolutely nothing wrong with making a good living, helping people have the most memorable celebration they can imagine. I think it's a very worthy thing to do, making a living doing that. And sadly, too many people think it's something you should only do part-time. It's part-time for me now. I work a full-time job during the weeks, but on the weekends, I'm still doing the weddings. I'm still traveling to California to do the weddings. I'm going out to the East Coast to do the weddings. There's nothing wrong with getting paid well to do a fantastic job for somebody's once in a lifetime celebration. And when you understand how to communicate that value that they will see and recognize, when you quote your price at the end, they won't go, why so much? They'll go, thank God it's not more than I thought it was going to be.
Either that, or they'll say to you, I didn't mind getting the email that said, you're out of our budget. What I didn't like was getting the email that says you charge too much. Because if you got that email that says you charge too much, then you did not convey your value.
There's some truth to that. There's some truth to that. But one of the biggest hurdles that we face is too often when people are hiring somebody to do what we do, they don't know what we do.
Right.
They don't know what we can deliver. And until you can show it to them in a very clear way that helps them see this is something substantively different than what they're used to and what they've seen at weddings in the past, they're going to compare you to every DJ they've ever seen, the vast majority of whom aren't doing it for a living, aren't doing it professionally, aren't doing it in a memorable, unique, and powerful way. And so you're being compared to the norm that's out there instead of the exception. And if you want to be seen as the exception, you have to know how to communicate that so they can see it as an exception, and they'll be more than willing to pay an exceptional price to get an exceptional experience.
Yep. Even for this old guy, they did that. So, all right. So 60 seconds. Where are we going with the future of weddings and planning?
I would say one of the things that I see happening in the future is I'll be able to gather even more intel on the people that I'm working with and the people that are in the room. Do you remember when Google Glasses was making a splash, but it never took off? One of the things that was helpful about that was the idea that as you looked around the room through these glasses, you could be given data about the people that you're looking at. Imagine you're at a party and people are celebrating, and somehow your computer is able to tell you in advance what the favorite demographic of music is in that room and what some of the most popular songs they like listening to on their own playlist. I think the more information becomes accessible, the easier it's going to be to start playing stuff that people are going to enjoy, and creating moments that are going to be wow moments because you had intel that nobody else had. These days, I've been accused of stalking, but I become Facebook friends with my clients. And as I get closer to their wedding day and I know who all the VIPs are going to be, I go to their Facebook page and I find all their friends and family members that are coming, and I get their pictures and I put them on the agenda. And I do that so when I look out in the room, I can see who my VIPs are and I can remember them easier, because names don't always do it for me. And if I can see their face, now I recognize that person. And so when I show up that day, I'm even more prepared because I know who's who by their face. And I can see in the room that my VIPs are here because I can see their picture on my sheet before I call out their name. And so just those little tidbits of having more intel, more information, more details will allow for more creative celebrations that have less hiccups and less problems.
Well, and I also think that the beauty of going on the Facebook page, a lot of times you'll have a couple come back and go, I just can't think of anything to give you as far as information on this bridesmaid or something. And then you go to their Facebook page and you go, oh, man.
Yeah.
So they do ballet and they, whatever. I mean, you can find information if you're willing to go dig for it.
I did that recently for a wedding I did. And one of the bridesmaids worked in a veterinary clinic and had pictures of herself on her Facebook page holding baby raccoons. And so I was able to mention that, and they got a kick out of that. Just little details that nobody would know.
Where the heck did you get that piece of information?
Yep.
So,
she's known for taking selfies with baby raccoons. And she's like, oh, how do you know that?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. All right. So, Peter, thank you so much. Again, sorry, the best wedding reception ever.
He edited the first version of the book, so I got to give him.
I did. I told him where all the comments go. And don't forget the fun
wedding experts,
funweddingexperts.com to pick up his DVDs. And I'm not kidding. I've usually when people call me and they want advice on, and I'm dead serious. When people call me, and they do, and I get people, DJs that will call and they'll say, hey, you know what? I'd like to talk to you about my business. And during the course of that conversation, one of the first things I'll do is I'll refer them to the videos, not necessarily the book right away, but I do refer them to the videos. And I say, hey, you know what? And then Randy Bartlett's, that's another one.
1% Solution video series.
Yeah, he would,
groundbreaking stuff.
Yeah, that's, oh my gosh. The 1% Solution will also teach you, it's fun how you learn. When you learn one thing and then you stumble upon something else that helps you elevate that thing. And then it just seems like it, and then it becomes fun. What else? Yeah. How else can I?
What else can I do to add more surprises and delight
myself? All right. So for everybody watching, thank you, Peter, very much.
Thank you.
And I'm sure Peter wouldn't mind if you reach out to him also. And from Ron Ruth, on behalf of DJNTV, thank you so much for watching. And I'll see you some other time. Bye, all.
Hey, thanks for being with us tonight. We are just going to keep right on going with our interviews tonight. We don't have a ton of time, so we're going to jump right into it. Our next, we've got Zach and Keisha Anderson coming to you from Fargo. And again, Ron, take it away.
So my guest today for this conversation, at least, is Zach and Keisha Anderson. Welcome, guys. So tell me a little bit. We're going to talk some about wedding planning as far as maybe the way it started for you when you first started your business. We'll talk a little bit about the present, and we're going to jump to the future towards the end of our conversation. But let's start with some really basic stuff, because you and I haven't really spent a whole lot of time together. So tell me a little bit about the name of your business, where you're located, and how long you've been around.
So the name of our business is Sound Engagement. It came to me at like 3 a.m. in the morning when I was half awake, trying to figure out what to do for an internship, and I couldn't find one. And so I created an internship, and that's how Sound Engagement was born, basically. Started with me and Keisha, but we are located in Fargo, North Dakota. We are a husband and wife team. It's only a single op. So it's Keisha and I, and we try to do one way in a weekend so we can focus all the attention on our couples and make sure the planning is seamless and effortless. But our main focus is on visual entertainment, which is a lot of video DJing, music videos, custom slideshows, and then event lighting is probably our other main focus other than visuals. So, yeah.
So that sounds like you have quite the niche as far as, because I didn't really, until I started exploring your website, I didn't really understand the terminology of visual storytelling as one of the, I believe some of the wording that you use on your website. What does that mean?
Go ahead, Keisha.
Yeah, so we not only do we play like music videos, but also we'll do customized slideshows. We can take video reels and also pictures of their life and put it together into one presentation, whether it's silently playing during that social hour or as a dedication. Right. We have guests that cannot be at the wedding, and we'll actually get video messages from them that will actually play. Sky's the limit when it comes to video. We've had a kid, he loved Batman. We had the officiant actually dress up and act like Batman, and we video recorded it and had it played at the wedding. So those are kind of the fun, unique things that we do for our couples.
Yeah, it was like a pinnacle moment of the night where he pressed a button, the bat signal came up on the ceiling, the lights turned around, they were all bat gobos, it turned purple, and then we played bat dance. And it was a good time for their family and friends because it was something that was meaningful to them. Both the groom and their son's middle name was Bruce Wayne, so they wanted something to incorporate that. So
his middle name was Bruce Wayne.
Their middle names are Bruce Wayne. The groom's dad, our groom, and their son all their middle names are Bruce Wayne.
So, okay. All right. So we got a lot to talk about that has nothing to do with that, but I'm sorry. I got to stop here for a second. So when you did all of this, I mean, I'm assuming this was a groom thing. How excited was the bride about all this?
The bride's the one that planned it.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Yeah. She originally wanted us to do a bat signal in the sky outside
with the searchlight, and so we had to contact the correct organizations to make sure that would happen, so it wouldn't interfere with planes and stuff. The FCC, and we had it ready to go. We were searching for a searchlight, and we got a price. And beet harvest wasn't that good that year, so they kind of slashed a couple excess charges that they wanted to make. Or expenses they wanted to make, and so that turned into just having like the gobo or the image on the ceiling in the venue instead of outside.
But there's nothing wrong with dreaming big, for crying out loud. I mean, you would not have known that it was not possible until you knew that it wasn't going to be possible. So that's oh man, that's wow, that should be a show in and of itself. I'd love to hear. So let's go back in the Wayback Machine for a few minutes. So you've been a husband and wife team for 8 years, is that right?
Yep, yes. 8 years. We started like basically when we started dating.
Well, wow. So, so Keisha, you come from a photography background.
Yes, also a graphic design background. About 15 years of college, so. Have communications, IT, graphic design, photography. And that's where I do a lot of my lighting now. Right. And also what we do in our company. So
how long were you dating before you decided, hey, let's maybe start a business?
So Zach and I met in 2014. We were student ambassadors for college. So that's how we met.
Yeah, down in St. Paul area.
At DCTC. And we probably started dating 6 months later.
In November, we went a few dates, and then things happen. You're like, I don't know if I want to do this right now. And then she's like, you better get your crap together and figure some stuff out. And then we did that. And
we were engaged in less than a year that we met.
Yeah.
We met.
Okay.
So we decided that we were both before I was doing freelance photography,
Right.
he was doing DJing.
Yep.
And we're like, let's combine our powers. And you know what? This is the lifestyle we want. And let's go into business together. And this is what we can do.
But we were probably together like 5 months before we got engaged.
Oh, yeah, probably.
Yeah. And then we got married in the August after that. So
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So it was yeah. Well, love at first sight is love at first sight. I don't know what, there's no way of arguing. So Zach, you were already DJing before all this?
I've been DJing since I was 11.
Wow.
My family is DJs. Both my cousins are DJs. All my friends are pretty much DJs growing up. And that's what I did. Went to school, DJed almost every weekend. Been DJing in bars since I was like 12 or 13. I've done weddings since I was 12. Yeah, or probably 11 actually. Was just helping out and doing lighting and doing it old school.
Wow. So yeah. So I mean, you were kind of behind the scenes at that age. You weren't really.
I wasn't in the planning process yet. No.
Yeah.
I would just show up and kind of help out. Yeah.
Okay.
For a little bit until I was 15. That's probably like my first dance I've done did by myself.
So God, when you were 11, that was what, 2 years ago? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
You look so young. So. So, all right. So let's talk a little bit about after your you started your business together, and this would have been again 8 years ago. So let's talk about what it was like to plan a wedding in those days. How involved were you as far as helping couples plan for either for their ceremony or for the reception? Either one as DJs.
I think when we first started, the company is what I knew, and so it would be a paper planner. Usually, and you'd meet with them one-on-one, you'd talk, maybe some emails, because it's not that long ago, 8 years, people think that's a long time ago, but it's really not. And then we do send them a paper form and they'd have to fill it out and send it back kind of stuff. But like I've known the owner of DJ Event Planner for a long time. We had DJ Event Planner. We just weren't using the forms in DJ Event Planner until after we got together and started kind of working through it. So mostly just
did you ever communicate? I mean, and what was your one-on-one communication with a couple? In other words, in person?
A lot of phone calls, some email, mostly some emails.
We'd meet at a coffee shop. We'd meet at coffee shops. We'd give them physical handouts of things, especially after they booked us. We'd give them like a full physical handout of everything that we offered, or
there's a lot of prints. Yeah,
it was a lot of printed materials that we would physically give them, and we could tell them we meet with them as many times as they wanted. And at the time, they wanted to meet that many times to plan. We didn't attend the rehearsal ceremonies at the time, but we had a planner and we'd start with the DJ event, what DJ Event Planner had, and we started tweaking it to make it fit our couples more. So that's evolved.
Yeah, it was.
But we're talking more
basic.
In the past. It was very basic. It was customizable, but not as fine-tuned as we have it now.
But yeah, most of our planning meetings were in person. Usually in a public space. It was loud, and
it was mostly coffee places.
Yeah, but they would grind coffee.
Yeah, I was remembering the days when I met couples at Starbucks, and there was always somebody that would order 15 frappuccinos.
Yeah, and then they would pay. Hopefully they'd fill out the paper and they'd send it back 2 weeks prior. Probably usually not. Usually we get it like the week of or something like that. Then you had to scramble, get all your songs ready to go. It wasn't very. It was kind of like cookie cutter a little bit, to tell you the truth, because that's what I knew. It wasn't as customizable as it is now.
And we've helped other DJ companies out, so we learned a lot in the process of how they plan and what they did at weddings. And we would take that back and think like, oh, that's a good idea, or why don't we do this in our weddings? So we've learned from also other colleagues within the industry as well.
Right, because it was hard, to market and get those bookings right away.
Okay, so I'm hearing I'm hearing a couple of things when you're talking about this planning process, even when you first began, that you were already kind of focused on, even though it may have been basic and maybe not have been as detailed as what you are today, but you were already focused somewhat on the customer experience, because you were saying, hey, we'll meet with you as many times as we need to meet with you. We're going to give you as much of our time and expertise as you possibly need. So you were already on that road when you first began. So what caused, for lack of better words, what caused that? What happened in your business life, maybe before you got married or shortly after, that made you go, hey, we need to be a little bit more customer centric?
I think growing up in a multi-op was one of those reasons why. It was very like, this is the process, this is what we did, and then we met with people twice, and then we did their wedding. And sometimes there would be a big fluke. Something would go wrong, a name would be pronounced wrong, because you weren't really prepared for that. Keisha and I are super A-type. We'll say that. We like to make sure everything's taken care of for people. We want to make sure that it's a set up for success. I think just our growing up and who we are as people just kind of made it natural to say, I would rather help you out and give you those building blocks to be successful, so our event can be one of a kind, than to be like everybody else.
We're also creative, so we and we connect personally to they're not our clients, they're our friends. We know all our past couples. We're still friends with all our past couples. We love Disney, and we go do research about how Disney does things. And so we bring that into our company, and we even tell people, like, hey, if you have a question about music, even if that's great, but if it's not related to music and you want to call us and like you're stressed out about something, we're happy we want to be a collaborative friend, giving high fives rather than like, hi, I'm your DJ and you've hired us to do this job.
Right.
It's more of a personal connection. That's the reason why we have the heart in our sound engagement.
Right. To me, a DJ is not necessarily a title. It is a skill set.
I like that. And a high five is far better than a slap in the face. So, I mean,
yeah,
you raise your hand, you want to not have to duck. And so, all right. So when did you decide that, hey, we're capable of doing so much more for our couples than what we're providing them? When did that page churn, and what caused it?
I think it was from just the asks of our couples. They wanted us to do certain things or find those people, and they couldn't find them or couldn't find someone to fulfill those needs. And so we just would have to wear different hats and be more than just a DJ. Mm-hmm. Like, I call myself a visual entertainer. I don't call myself a DJ. There's a fine line between being a DJ and an entertainer. I think an entertainer entertains people, but they're also encompass a lot. There's a broader spectrum of what their skill set actually is. A DJ when I talk to people, sometimes I'm just someone who plays music. And when you get to that, from that point in your life or in your career that says, I'm there to do more than just play music. I think that's where kind of like that turning point of how else can I serve my couples and serve my clients.
Plus, it's just natural for us to connect in that way and be customizable like that, because when we weren't that way, it felt like we were disconnected from what we were doing.
Right.
And we weren't having fun. And we love learning about who they are and what's important to them and how to create something unique for them only. And the energy in the room and the result of what you get out of that is just so rewarding. And so it naturally comes to me, right, to be honest. It's hard for me not to make a personal connection and just go do a job. It's a wedding. That is a private, very intimate thing that somebody shares with you. And for you to just go and make it it's just not in my DNA.
Yeah.
And those are the people we attract,
right.
Nothing, we can go do a basic wedding, but most of our couples really like that hand holding, or they want to be reassured that everything is taken care of. So,
Yeah, I've always said that if I were ever hired before I retired, if I had ever been hired just to be a DJ and play it, and all you wanted me to do is sit in a corner and play music, just shoot me, because I don't think I could make it. It would be very long, and I would be very unhappy if that was what was the only thing that was ever expected of me was just to play music. It just couldn't do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So you have, I'm interested in, before we get into how you go about the planning process today, you attract a very, you have a niche. So
Yep.
how would you describe your couples? How do you describe the couples that you market to, or the couples that come to you? Tell me a little bit about those individuals.
A lot of them say, we've been to all these other weddings before. We've been part of weddings, and we want something more creative, different, an event that tells our story.
Right.
And we don't want the DJ to over MC and be focused on them. Like, there's a reason why everyone's here, and that's because they're getting married, right?
Right.
So we would ask them about who they are as people. A lot of the brides are probably the most vocal out of the two. If it's a traditional wedding, I don't
they're
know.
really into lighting.
Yeah, lighting is.
They
one of
get
the
way
main
beyond
focus.
the basic lighting. They ask intricate questions about what type of music, energy level. We don't want activities. We want a straight up party. Or, I have these videos, and I don't know how long my grandfather is gonna, be here, and we really want to do something extremely special. Or I want to transform this room and make it look like a sunset.
Right.
Like, those are the type of people that we attract, all age groups.
Yeah, but it always seems like there's a loved one in their past that has passed that they want to tell their story too, and have that be a moment in their day. And have those like VHS tapes converted to digital so we can play those so people can see that types of stuff. Or Keisha's background in photography, so she can take old photos and make those pop. Or there's just different things that we can do. It's just, I think sky's the limit.
They're creatives as well. They're kind of kids at heart, very similar personalities that kind of mesh,
Yeah.
So.
And they always are, a lot of them are looking for a husband and wife team.
Oh yeah.
They want two people to be there.
That's a thing. They're like, oh, that's so nice that there's two of you.
Because they want both perspectives.
That's interesting. So, I had a question on the top of my head. What the heck was it? Oh, so when you meet with a couple, if they've not seen you perform before at another event, do you actually show them videos of everything that you can do, or do you just describe? How do you go about that process, or is it all available on your website? How do you go about doing that?
The one thing we really need to focus on right now is content creation, because it's hard for us to record things in
private events
that we're doing all the time. We feel like some of the times we don't need to be recording and like blasting those over the social media or internet. But
what we have is if people ask for visuals, because there's a few of them. I mean, most of the time when people call us, we're connecting and getting to know them first. It's not about the selling. It's about like, hey, what do you need? What's important to you? How did you guys meet? Different things like that. And then it comes into, oh, can we see examples of what your setup looks like?
Right.
I usually have something I share with them via PDF, or they can look on our website, or they can look on our Facebook page. If they want an example of Zach mixing, I do have like maybe 1 or 2 videos. But a lot of them don't really ask for that. They just want to know if it's the right fit, to be honest. So we kind of use social media, website, and just probably connecting via phone and email in order to answer all their questions, which usually only takes maybe 1 or 2 touch points, and then they decide.
Yeah. But if we can get them in person, it's usually like right away, within the next 5 days, they're ready to go. Over Zoom, it's a little bit
Yeah, but
somewhat
then
difficult, but we can talk about
that when we get to the present of things compared to now.
Well, let's go ahead and let's jump ahead a little bit because not jump ahead. Let's go ahead and get into the present. The question I ask may have some redundancies in it because of the things that you just said. So don't hesitate to repeat. But so in today's world versus 8 years ago, what's the major difference in the way you help a couple go about planning their wedding today?
We do now when we do have ceremony coordination, like if they hire us for ceremony sound, we do attend their rehearsal the day before.
Right.
We help with lineup. We coordinate with the officiant. Also, our DJ event planner has been, I would say, pimped out per se.
Yeah.
So we actually have it customized. It's branded to us. It's reactive, where if a couple says, I don't want something, those questions don't pop up. It's very responsive.
Right. It's a very powerful tool if you know how to unlock it.
Mm-hmm. So
or have friends to unlock it.
we use that. And then we actually reach out to all the vendors.
Right.
Like 3 months ahead of time, which we were starting to do in the past, but now it's a full-fledged thing where we involve everybody.
Right.
As much as we can.
But when they reach out to us, a lot of times it's either over email, sometimes Facebook Messenger, but not too often. Sometimes Instagram, but not too often. A text, and then we may meet in person. But sometimes it's over the phone.
A lot of our couples don't even live in Fargo.
Right.
Like one of our weddings is in Chicago, but we still go above, way and beyond. Like next week, we'll actually be in the near Chicago, Milwaukee area. We're actually physically driving to that site and going to check it out.
To meet with the venue, to meet with the event planner, to make sure everything goes well, and so that we are 100% already in that space before the day of.
Yep. So that's some of the things that we do and we continue to do or perfect.
Or when we're in Billings or anywhere else in the United States, we'd rather go and do a site visit before the date so that we know exactly what's going on. So we know all those questions logistically and get set up in time and efficiently and make sure it's all focused on them. So.
So how far in advance are you going to go? First off, how far away is Chicago?
So Chicago from us, let's see, it's 4 hours to Keisha's parents, which is right out of St. Paul, and then 6 hours to the venue in north of Chicago. So it'd be 10 hours.
So you're going to go do an advanced site inspection? You're going to drive the 10 hours just to go look at the venue?
Well, we also have other responsibilities that week that we have to be in Milwaukee right afterwards for. So, we have trips planned and we make sure that some of those site visits are planned with those trips as well. So,
but most of our planning is done over Zoom. And then if they want, maybe occasionally we'll meet in person, but not as often as we did before 2020.
Before pandemic, yeah, because everybody's gotten used to Zoom. So I heard you say though, Zach, a moment ago that if you can get with the couple within 4 to 5 days, I think, of original contact, do you meet with the couples in person?
If we can, yeah.
Yes.
If they're in the region or within like 4 hours, maybe 5, we're fine with driving that way because there's usually we can make a trip out of it. Keisha and I can work anywhere. We can contact our clients as long as we have internet or cell phone data service. So we have an office. Do people go there and meet? Not necessarily. I'd rather meet with them where they feel comfortable. Sometimes that is a bar or a coffee shop. But the office to me is a place to work, but not necessarily do we need to meet there to go over planning or anything.
And our planning process is pretty casual. We mostly just talk about things and then maybe go over. I think within 3 to 4 meetings, we've got all the planning done. And we let them know, like, hey, we can be done with the planning anytime you want. Our couples will typically book us 12 to 6 months out.
And you meet with them 3 to 4 times between the time they book you and the time that they actually have their event.
Right.
Yep.
All in all, how much advance time First off, do you charge? I didn't look on your website. I don't recall. It didn't say anything. I may not have said anything about time. Is your performance time unlimited, or do you have like a 4 or 5 hour?
So that's a good question. We used to say unlimited. We no longer say unlimited. We say like an event. So social hour and
Social
dinner
hour to the end of the night.
Social hour to the end of the night usually is what we cover. So if that is 5 hours or 6 hours or 7 or 4, 3, I don't know. It's up to you guys, you know?
Because we're there the whole day anyways, because we're there in the morning setting up. It is extra to get the ceremony, or it's included in our middle option that we have.
Right.
But typically where we do weddings, most weddings are done before midnight. We do have an option where if they want to go past midnight, it does come in at extra cost, but we don't want our couples to worry about how many hours they have us that day.
Right. It's just us.
Yeah.
We don't have to itemize things or worry about talents being like overworked or the things I had to worry about when I was growing up. You know, it's just Keisha and I, and we're just going to do our life because it's our job, but it's also our life.
Yeah. So the couples really appreciate that. They're like, man, that really takes the stress off, that I know that you guys are going to be there the whole time. And that really brings value.
Yeah.
So, and I'd feel bad at like, oh, well, you can only afford this many hours. I'm sorry, we can't be there for social hour, when
I think the good way to answer that, we tell people, is that we don't necessarily do this for the money all the time. We do it so that we can be together. We can do this together, and we don't have to worry about where the other person is, or if we just rely on each other a lot. I guess we're not codependent, but well,
I believe, I don't think there's anything wrong with making a living at what you do in this profession. I mean, there's a lot of people that would argue that, but I honestly believe that there's nothing. I did it.
Right.
I know lots of other people that did it and do it still. Right. And I don't think that charging a fair and reasonable wage for what you do and the expertise that you bring, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I think where a lot of people also miss the mark is when I love the fact that you don't have a beginning and end time. It doesn't sound like on your contract, other than midnight, which I also had in my contract, because nothing good ever happens after midnight. It just doesn't. So I don't know why, huh?
So I don't DJ in bars anymore.
Well, and I think I think where a lot of DJs miss the mark is, look, I knew that in my market that an average event was going to be 4 to 5 hours regardless.
Right. So
why should I say I'm going to charge you a 4-hour fee or a 5-hour fee? I'll just make it all inclusive. So, if it ran a couple minutes after 5 hours, it didn't matter. It was already incorporated in my price. Right. And if it ran less, it ran less. And I was always honest with my couples. I'm sure you've had them as well. They're going to be there from 2, of course, from talking to John Young and others, and where you guys are, an event can go like forever, because what else is there to do in North Dakota? I'm just kidding. But
Minnesota or North Dakota, it's like, I remember growing up and it'd be at 5 a.m. in the morning because those people would keep paying.
Yeah. But I think that, I think that most DJs miss the mark when by charging by the hour, when you know that an event is only going to last typically this long. And if somebody came to me and said, oh, they'll be there this long, I would usually say, you know what? Honestly, I don't think I just be honest with them. Honestly, I don't think that's going to happen. Right. But if it happens, it happens. You're paying me. It's all inclusive regardless, up to midnight, because I honestly believe nothing good happens after midnight as well. So let's talk about, before we get into the future, let's talk a little bit about what most people in business rely also on some sort of training to get them to where they are. Talk a little bit about what is it that you've done in your business to further your education or your training?
You want to start us off?
Oh, okay.
There's a lot.
Well,
That's
there's
fine.
like self-learning, and then also Zach and I do connect with a lot of industry professionals within the region. We do have a Facebook page. I think John and Ben are part of it,
John is part of it.
and Bill Herman's part of
Yeah.
it too. But it's called the Red River Valley.
DJs.
Yeah, DJ's page, and so we learn from our colleagues.
Yeah, our market, like right when we moved here, we
Mhm.
got everyone together so everyone could learn from one another. So that's a super big referral, you know.
Yeah.
So we have educational stuff that we put on regionally with our market, and so we try to learn from one another.
We go to
we've
conferences.
Gone to a plethora of conferences
Mhm.
that we've either attended as an attendee or have planned because we are part of Midwest DJs Live. Both of us are on the board. So, and then we've also done a lot of seminars with it, whether it be Bill's. We definitely want to do Mark and Rebecca's stuff. We just haven't found time to do them with our schedule because we don't only do weddings, we do other things as well during the week.
Just going and helping other companies out. Sometimes we combine our powers with, even when we do more than just weddings. We actually do AV event production.
Okay.
And so sometimes we will team up with local event production companies here in town and help them with events. And we've actually learned quite a bit
Right.
from them as well. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think helping other companies out definitely helped us out as a company, whether it be in Duluth or in Sioux Falls or Madison or even down in South Carolina. Depends on where our friends need help, and if that, you can always learn from one another.
Yeah, I think that mentorship is an important part of this. I mean that I think it was Randy Bartlett years ago said, really there are, because so many DJs were like, well, I don't want to give away my secrets. And as Randy Bartlett explained, really there are no DJ secrets. We're all going to play. In those days it was, we all do the YMCA the same way, and we're all going to play. We're all going to play that song. Again, that was years ago, but really a good part of what I learned from other DJs that were willing to give of their time and their knowledge to me. And then also the going to conferences. And I heard you say that you are both on the board for DJ Live. So I'll let you plug it. When's it coming up?
It's coming up very soon, like 2 weeks.
yeah, it's April 23rd through the 25th in downtown Milwaukee at the Hyatt. So we're actually still selling tickets.
Yeah.
Really? Okay. What website would people want to go to?
The best website to go to is the only one, MidwestDJsLive.com.
Okay. All right. You still have tickets available, correct?
Still
Yes.
have tickets
Can you tell-
available.
Can you tell me a little bit about who's speaking?
Well, I can tell you quick if I bring it up. Our education director, Rich Lang, is the one that is the brainchild for the majority of all of our education.
Right.
He's co-emceeing with Rob Foray. So
Rob is going to be there?
Yes,
I
he's
like Rob. Rob is a good guy.
He's co-MC. We've got Big Daddy.
I'm getting them up right now. Speakers.
Yeah.
Here we go. We got Eric Rhodes.
Okay.
We got Eric Rhodes. Okay. Do you know who Eric Rhodes is?
No, who's Eric Rhodes?
He's really big on TikTok. He's a TikTok DJ.
Yep. Most of
Okay.
his bookings are from his TikTok videos.
Okay.
Kaylee Weiss. Kaylee Weiss is a creator, visual branding. She's a branding educator, basically.
Yep. We've got
Yep.
Mike Walter.
And
Yep.
Mike is cool.
Stefan Jez. He's coming from us from the great land of Canada.
Okay. The great land of Canada.
Yep. I grew up 5 miles away from Canada. I
Well,
can't.
you have to say nice things are close. So if they invade, that way you'll be able to escape. All right.
JW Jager. I don't know him personally. Do you know JW?
No, I've
No.
never met him. A lot of people a lot of speakers come to our show that have never spoken at other conferences.
Great. Pat Dwyer. Chris Shelley.
Okay.
I've only heard great things about Chris. Our great friend, Sean Big Daddy McKee.
Oh yeah. Well, I heard you say Big Daddy, and then I also heard you say Rob Ferre. So be careful. Buckle your seatbelts because it's going to be.
You know Rob's nickname, right?
No.
What?
Hip Hop Foray.
Hip Hop Ferre.
And then we have Justin Reed from South Carolina. He's going to be talking about Chat GPT. So all about the AI stuff.
And then we're going to have some workshops and some roundtables. Rob's going to be leading a workshop. Digital Dave Lander from Pittsburgh. Matt Redicelli, he's sponsoring all of our roundtables. So we're
there's going to be mentor pod style.
Do it mentor pod style. And Chris Hintz. And Chris Hintz and his team are doing all the production. So Pinnacle is going to be rocking our education and some of our nightlife.
All right. So what was the website again?
Midwest DJs Live.
And what's the dates again?
April 23rd to the 25th.
2023. In case somebody's watching this video a year from now.
Great.
So,
in the great land of Milwaukee.
In the great land of Milwaukee.
Milwaukee.
Yeah. All right. So 60 seconds.
Yeah.
What's the future of wedding planning going to look like?
A lot of it's going to be couples want to know everything right away. So if they're ready to book, they're going to be ready to book. It's going to be a lot of texting, I think, and a lot of not face to face. They want you to be as simple as possible. They won't want homework. They just want to have a party and tell you a couple things, and that's about it. That's what I think.
I think the customization will never go away. If anything, it'll come back and it'll become more and more important to people to make it unique. So then it's not like everybody else's.
I think the majority of brides, though, are going to be like, I just want to party, because the people that we attract aren't the average people. I think average people are just going to be like, I want to do it now. I want to get done. And that's all I want.
Yep. They want something different and they don't want the activities. Yep. I think the activities will slowly start going away, or new traditions will start evolving.
Line dances are going away.
I'm sorry. I thought they had already gone away. I'm sorry.
I know they are, but we live in North Dakota.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
You go.
People are still doing the achy breaky heart up there.
I know, but planning. Everything's on their phone. They want it to be done instantly. They want the answers instantly.
I think just
time spans are
our
different.
Tools will just change. The way that we communicate with each other, what we use in order to help with the planning is going to change. I mean, a lot of things have changed in the past 10 years. So can't really say how it's going to go, but I have a feeling that it's going to evolve, and the technology is going to have a big impact on that. But people are still going to want that connection. It just might be a little bit different, and we might be using different tools.
I think we're going to stop. We'll still use video to meet with each other instead of in person necessarily, but it's not going to be like this. It's going to be in the metaverse. It's going to be AI, because that's what people want, because they can still have that one-on-one but still be at their house.
Okay. All right. Cool. Sounds great.
Just a prediction.
So Zach and Keisha, Sound Engagement, soundengagement.com, as I discovered. I would encourage DJs coming into the DJ, I started to say Disney World, coming into the DJ world to investigate their website, because I think it's really cool. I think it's a great, intuitive website. I found it to be, I love the names of your packages. So I won't give that away. Go look, again, soundengagement.com. Zach, Keisha, thank you so much for your time and for your expertise. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, and I look forward to actually having. So I want to go back at some point. We're going to have to do a show on Batman, because that's I'm just totally I want to know more about that one. So that's it. That's intriguing to me. All right, so for those of you watching, thank you so much. It's Ron Roos. I'm going to see you some other time. Bye, Zach. Keisha, thank you again.
Thanks, Ron. Bye.
And our final interview tonight is with Mike Lenstra, coming to us from Iowa. Ron's going to be handling our last interview. And then after this, we're going to wrap the show up and then jump out to DJNTV.com/chill. We've got our Monday night, 10 o'clock Eastern, Hanging with Howie. It'll be a few minutes late tonight, but jump out there, DJNTV.com/chill, and hang out with the crew. It's kind of the hallway talk after the convention, the day at the convention. And that's what we've got that set up for you. And Howie and the crew, they'll record for about 20 minutes. They record a little spot each week, and then then after that, then you can open up the cameras and the microphones and chat and hang out and have some fun. We're going to jump right into it. Ron, take it away.
So one of my favorite things about doing these recordings from my buddy John at Disc Jockey News TV is I get to talk to old friends. And today I'm getting to talk to a friend of mine I've known for, God, I don't know how many years. Mike, we've been friends probably for well over a decade, I'm thinking.
Oh yes. I know I started
Somewhere in
writing
that area.
Disc Jockey News in 2011. So yeah, it's got to be. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we both wrote for Disc Jockey News when it was in existence, and we had our different takes. And by the way, Mike went so far as to take all of his articles and put them into a book called The Way I See It, which I was kind of thumbing through it this morning. And what page am I mentioned on, John? Mike, I'm sorry.
I tell you, I'd have to pull out the book.
Yeah, you don't know it right off the top of your head?
Not off the top of my head, but yes. In the Needle series, as the needle moved, I remember we had a nice conversation at that time, yes.
Yeah, but seriously, this book, Stories and Lessons Learned from 25 Years Behind the Turntables, Decks, and Laptop. Is this book still available?
Yes, it's still out on Amazon.
Amazon? Okay, so
yes.
If you don't have this book, make sure you go get it, because it is a fun read, and there's some great stories in here of I guess I should say events that Mike has been a part of, and he's also interviewed some great folks about their experiences as well. So great book, go get it. So anyhow, so Mike, we're going to talk a lot about wedding planning today. And I know you've been in business for, well, like it says in your book, well over 25 years, but this book was written probably a couple of years ago. So
2019, we began to put it together. Yes.
Yeah. So you're probably at what, 30 years now? Pretty close.
30, yes. 31 years now.
31 years. Wow. Okay. So that means you started your business, what, back in 89?
Yeah, I began in 91, the end of 91, working for another company. And then that company, this is the 90s, and they were still doing vinyl records. And we started to tell the owner, like, we can't get new music on records anymore. Right. And he really didn't want to change. So he began to kind of phase out. But before they completely went out of business, then I jumped ship in 94 and began my own business.
I see. And what's funny is that now vinyl is making its way back.
Yes. Yes.
It's all of a sudden there seems to be a rush for vinyl. So I'm going to go through my vinyl collection from years and years ago and see if it's worth anything at this point. So let's talk a little bit about that experience back in 91 when you first started working for another company, and what was it like? Did you do weddings when you first started?
Yeah, the very first event I did, and that company was a pretty large multi-op, and what they would do would be they would hire people to come be like the assistant, the second person. Again, at that time, equipment was just so large, you could only use it or move it with a cargo van. You needed two people. Yes, you needed two people to carry things. And so they had the DJ, and then they had the assistant DJ. And if you were able to hang it out long enough, eventually you could work your way up to a DJ, which is exactly what I did.
So you were actually kind of thrown into the fire almost right away when it came to weddings.
Oh yeah, quick story, Ron. I'll never forget the first wedding I was at, and they kept coming up to me as an assistant. You would take the request, and I told the DJ there, Bob, his name was. I told them they keep asking for some Darth guy. It was Garth Brooks, and I had no idea who Garth Brooks was.
Garth who?
Yes. Yeah.
Never heard of him. Never heard of him.
Yes. But once he played Friends of Low Places, I was literally out buying the CD within a week.
So how soon did you say it was after you started and you were that apprentice? How long did it take before they just threw you in and said?
It was probably, well, I'd say I did my first wedding like maybe 3 months after starting there. But that was only because someone that I worked with at the time was getting married and knew that I had started at this company. And so she requested me, and they were comfortable enough, like, well, okay, she knows him. So we'll see how he does here. And so that was my first wedding, but it was probably not until later that first spring. Again, I started in October of 91 with them. It was probably like maybe in May when they started going, okay, I think we can try him out at maybe more of a low budget wedding or something like that to kind of kind of break me in to see how I would do.
So part of the process of this conversation, and I probably should have mentioned it before, is that we want to talk about the past, present, and future. In other words, what it was like for us when we started, because I also started in 91 and as well, maybe 90, I was also working for somebody else. But we want to talk a little bit about what it was like then, and then what changes took place to bring us to where we are today, and then how we think the future is going to the future is going to pan out for us. So let's continuing in our conversation, though, going back to 91, the spring of 92, I believe you said. What was it like planning for that first wedding? What was the process?
Well, again, working with this multi-op, there wasn't much of a process for us as the DJs. Couples were brought to the office maybe a month or so before their wedding, sat down, and it was just one run through. Let's go through your timeline. Here's what the songs for key moments are, right, such like that. And then the Monday before that wedding, we would be given the upcoming contracts and planning paperwork for this weekend's weddings. And that was the first time we ever saw anything, was the Monday before the wedding. And we would sit down and go, okay, this is what I need. And sometimes, we did not carry our own music library. That was all with the company. And we would kind of look through and go, boy, I know I don't have this record. Right. And we would maybe go talk to some of the other ones. Do you have this record? Kind of borrow and swap and things like that. So we had the pertinent music that we needed for the week. And then we were required to call and introduce the couple that week. Maybe like Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe Thursday, we would get a hold of the couple, call them up and say, hey, my name is Mike and I'm your DJ for the weekend. And I just wanted to double check that this is what you want. Okay, I will see you Saturday. The first time I would ever see the couple would be the day of their wedding.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you weren't even a part of that planning process either.
No,
when they came into the office.
Not. No.
Yeah.
No.
So what was that like to walk into a wedding on a Saturday and meet the couple for the very first time?
Well, yeah, it was a little different, but again, back in the 90s, there did not seem to be as many details as there are now. I just believe that at that time, couples kind of figured, well, these are the wedding professionals, and I think when they hired this company, they were kind of told this is how we do things. And it was pretty much a standard timeline, and everyone just followed kind of the same routine type thing. And couples kind of assume, well, they know what they're doing. And so we did not have a lot of differences from one wedding to the next.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I agree. I mean, even for me, when I first started, everything was pretty much all laid out exactly the same. You did this at this time, this at this time,
yep,
this at this time. And it was all, there was no variation to it because I was a wedding expert, and as a wedding expert, this is the way.
Yeah, we actually had a template, and here's when dinner is, and then here's when the toasts come in, and these are your first 4 or 5 songs. Played this, your oldies, and then we do like the Garter of the Bouquet toss. Yeah, everything was down just as a template.
So when you started your own business a couple of years later, what was it? Did you pretty much follow the same format, or did you already recognize that there need to be some kind of changes? Tell me about that process.
That was a struggle. Like anyone, when I decided to go out on my own, my I guess selling point was, well, I can do the same thing as all these other people, but I can just do it cheaper. That was it. And of course,
we used to compete. We used to compete on who could a race to the bottom. I think is the way it's been described. Yes. Yeah.
And looking back, and I even still have some of my original brochures here. And looking back, I was pretty much saying the same generic thing everyone else was.
Right.
I have, thousands of songs. I have dazzling lights. I can pack a dance floor, and I can do it cheaper than anyone else. And even though I believed all of that, my phone really wasn't ringing off of the wall, and I was just perplexed. I would get phone calls. I would talk to people, but then they would never call back. Of course, at that time, I never followed up either. And I would just pull my hair out, like, why am I not getting bookings? Why? I have just, again, the same thing I thought everyone else had, and I'm doing it for less. Why am I not getting the bookings? And it was a struggle. And I can really see sometimes when they say new businesses fail, there's a very high percentage fail in the first 5 years or something. And I could really see that. And it wasn't until at that time, of course, Mobile Beat magazine had just come out, and I subscribed to that. And then I began reading through the Mobile Beat magazine and starting to kind of pick up on some ideas and like, oh, okay, maybe there are differences. And it wasn't until I started to really try to put some of those practices in place rather than, how you doing? When's your wedding date? Well, let me tell you about us, and just go through my whole elevator speech. That's when I began to ask questions and started to try to get them to tell me what they wanted more so than what I could do for them. And when I could answer those questions to their liking, that's only when I started to see the growth of the business.
Well, in those days, too, I mean, the internet was new. So for the most part, all of us were in the yellow pages. And so brides were only talking to businesses that answered their phones. If you didn't answer your phone, they'd just move on to the next one. Because in a bride's mind, we were all alike, primarily because we all talked about our lights, our sound, our music, all of those say, I dress in a tux, and I do this and I do that, which was pretty much the same things that they were hearing from everybody. So it was only natural that DJs were competing on price, because in a bride's mind, and even in our own mind, we were too stupid to figure out that, hey, if we want to win the business, we have to find a way to set ourselves apart. And I don't think that most of us had that realization in the early 90s.
No.
And so, as you said, until Mobile Beat came along, and until other educational opportunities came along, where we could actually learn from DJs who had figured it out, we were all kind of in that same boat, so to speak. So, all right. So you were starting to ask questions, and you found that was something that was working for you.
Yes, I mean, one of the first questions I seemed to ask a lot of times was, okay, so how did you come about me? Were you just kind of doing like a yellow page search, or did you see us at another wedding or something? And then when they would start to say, yes, I saw you at that wedding. At that time, I was doing so few weddings, I remembered them all. And so I could say, oh, yeah, that was a great time. Maybe a little thing about that wedding, or if I was referred from a banquet hall, then we may maybe make a little conversation about that. And that would just kind of seem to kind of start breaking the ice. And then it was, well, tell me about you and your fiance. I mean, how long have you dated? Did you both grow up here? I mean, just kind of getting those kind of questions and kind of building that rapport with them before we even got into the whole sales line.
So you had already figured this out by the mid-90s?
I started, I'd say, right around the mid-90s. Yes. Okay. But I have to say, I think it was, again, 92, 93 when I subscribed to Mobile Beat. I was reading that. But then I got my first computer in 96. Obviously, email was getting to be a big thing. And if you didn't email with companies, you were behind the boat. But it was then when I got on to the internet, and then I discovered that there were things called DJ chat boards. Yeah, I remember DJ Chat was one of them. Pro DJ was one of them. And then there was a whole gathering spot for DJs to share information and ideas. And then I began to really read through those, participated in some of the chats and such like that. And then, I mean, there was a lot of self-described experts out there that really weren't. But then that's when I believe I first came across Peter Mary, who would later go on to become the president of the American Disc Jockey Association. That's when I came across him and a few others at the time that seemed to be just maybe a step ahead of everyone else and their approach to this. And I mean, I'd learned from there, being on the chat boards, it was like taking a bag of dung and you had to throw it in there and kind of shake it out and find where the gold was in there. But there was, I mean, if you followed the right people, you got to really realize who was really giving some great advice and who else was just talking just to talk. That really seemed to be kind of what started to set me on the whole process of, okay, there's more to this than just bringing thousands of songs and pretty lights.
Right. So basically it turned into an aha moment where you said, yes, maybe there's even though I'm doing these things, there's always something more I can be doing.
Yes.
And in that regard. So I want to jump ahead a little bit to actually probably a lot of it. So about 30 years later in your current business, tell me a little bit about how have you evolved in that 30 years?
Yeah, it's kind of fun looking back on where I was and what I was doing back then, from then till now. I realized that what's the saying, find a niche, you'll grow rich type thing. And I realized that I had to be a little different and tell people how I was a little different as time went on. And what was it that I thought maybe I was a little different than others? And I really began to feel that I would have people come up and going, this happened to me more times than I can count. It's like, tell me, what radio station are you on? I know I've heard you before. I've never been on the radio, Ron, but it just told me that my voice and my MC ability was maybe what set me apart. So then I began to really, really work us and kind of, really work on and that and kind of focus on that. And then one of the things I did for that was I joined Toastmasters. I also, like I said, started out, my business in '94. As it kept growing, I started to add people with me. By 2008, I finally said to my wife, "This is not like this, weekend job anymore. This is I'm putting more into this than my full-time job. One of these has to go." And fortunately for my wife, she let me pick the one that I really liked. So, and I say things must work because I turned on TV today. We still have electricity. I still can get ESPN. So things must be working. Yes.
I still have electricity.
Yep. So things must have worked out. But then when I decided, that was in 2008 when I went full time. And then I really began to use that to my advantage, because I know there's full-time DJs all across the country, but living in a small community, it's finding a full-time DJ is kind of like finding a Red Lobster in Little Prairieville or something like that. It's just not too often. So I really began to use that to my advantage when I would talk to couples. Once we really I found out who they were, what their expectations were for a wedding, and then I would start to tell them a little bit about me. And kind of one of my opening lines was, well, I'm probably going to be a little bit different for two reasons. One, this is my full-time job, so I can take all the time necessary needed to prepare for your wedding. And second is, I don't believe there's one way to do a wedding. If you have some other, some ideas that you'd like to do things different, or you don't want to do it all, I'd love to hear them. I really believe that yeah, not every wedding has to be the same. Weddings to me are like ice cream. There's just so many different flavors. Like, you know, what's this couple's? What, you know, it's only my responsibility to kind of put sprinkles on the top, as long as we're kind of serving the flavor that they want for their day.
Well, I heard you say, and we're going to get into, you know, how you go about planning a wedding today. But what I really want to take a moment, because you said something that sparked a question that had to do with, pardon me, had to do with you took Toastmasters, and I think so many DJs today don't realize the benefit of not just Toastmasters, but there are so many educational opportunities out there and available to them to help them improve in their business, which ultimately helps improve their bottom line. So let me ask you, Mike, beyond Toastmasters, what else have you done? What are the courses, or what other training have you participated in that you feel has been beneficial to you?
You know, I've done Toastmasters, and I've been a member of our local chamber since, gosh, maybe the early 2000s, something like that. And they've had some wonderful programs in there. They had one, I remember, it was called Strengthening Your Business Core. And it was a course of like over 6 weeks that we participated in, and dealt with just, you know, business in general, finances and sales, and just, you know, professionalism. Then they also had one called Business Builders Breakfast. And then I also made it a point, like I said, you know, early on it was Mobile Beat Magazine, then it was the chat boards, and then I can't remember when the first Mobile Beat DJ convention started.
I was just going to say, I know that you also went to conferences, which that's one of the places where we first met.
Yeah. It was the Mid-America Conference in Louisville, Kentucky, the first one I went to in 1999. And kind of ironically, their keynote speaker was Scott Seward, Screaming Scott, it was called. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy's just like a live wire. But then when I began writing for the newspaper, I reached back to Scott and got some quotes and such from him. And I still keep up with Scott to this day. But I made kind of a promise to myself after I was at that conference in Louisville that I wanted to do something educational every year, whether that was going to you know, a national DJ conference, whether it was doing something through the chamber, whether it was doing you know, like a wedding seminar. And I've still kept up to that. Every year I try to find something educational to participate in. You're never too old to learn, and things are evolving all the time. If you think what you learned in 2005 is still pertinent here in 2023, that's not how it works anymore.
Well, I think and 2005 was a turning point, or at least 2005, maybe 2004, when Mark Farrell first came to Mobile Beat and spoke for the very first time, where he talked about getting what you're worth, which was an eye-opener to hundreds of DJs.
Yes.
Oh, exactly. What are we doing charging minimum, even less than what people could rent equipment? Why are we doing this to ourselves when in fact we could be making a living? And actually that's where the chat boards really started going bananas, because there were some people that actually believed that if you were charging a living wage, you were somehow taking advantage of the consumer. And
I was one of those guys, Ron.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yes. I was, when I first heard the Worth movement and Mark Farrell, and I'm like, yeah, right, Mark. Come to Podunk, come to Iowa, see how that flies. That is never going to work. That is just never going.
And it wasn't just a matter of, it's not going to work in my market. It was a matter, there were people that actually believed that if you were charging, and Mark's philosophy was, at the bare minimum, we should be charging at least $1,200. And that was 2005.
Yes.
Right now, or 2004, maybe 2003. I could be off on my dates. But there were actually people that believed that if you were charging $1,200 for a wedding in those days, that you were somehow taking advantage of the little guy, and and that, you shouldn't do that because, come on. People can't,
I hope this isn't too
people can't pay that.
Yeah. I hope
but then there were folks like you that believe, and even me that believed that that's not going to work in my market. As a matter of fact, I remember, and not to make it all about me, but I can remember on the way home, I had actually I was a multi-op then too. And I was on my way home I took 2 DJs with me to that conference, and they were both on the plane going, yeah, let's raise our rates. Let's raise our rates. I'm guessing I was maybe $395 in those days, somewhere around there, which was still pretty substantial compared to what was happening in my market. And they wanted to immediately raise rates, and I was smart enough to say, I believe that $1,200 is a goal, but I don't know that I'm ready just to say, let's just make that big giant leap. And I think a lot of people misunderstood that as well. And I also believe that for that kind of money, it was more than just asking for that amount of money. In those days, I believed you had to actually provide more in the way of service if you were going to ask that much in the way of a fee. So, all right. So, good. My point is that for all of us, and I'm since retired, but and it's funny when my wife and I we just moved into a brand new house. And one of the things my wife made me do when we moved was you have to downsize. So I did have a collection of every name tag that I had ever gotten going to all the different conferences across the country. And I wound up throwing that all away. But and let's go back for just a second though, before we move on. You also attend Midwest Live, which is a conference that still takes place all the time, or not all the time, but every year.
Every year, yes.
And there's, from what I understand, there's some great quality content in that. I have attended the Photo Booth Expo, which now is also more inclusive to include DJs and content for DJs as well. So there are still, and there are even people that still offer one-on-one consults, like Peter Mary. You talked about Peter. I know Peter still does consults. I still do consults. There are always individuals out there you can learn from. My dad taught me when I was a kid, he said, it doesn't matter how good you think you are at something, there's always going to be someone better. And the only way that you can get better is through practice or through education in this case. And so, all right. So again, enough about me. Let's talk about you, Mike. So today, tell me a little bit, tell us, the viewers, tell me about the planning process as it stands for you today. How do you go about, in a nutshell, kind of, how do you go about planning, helping a couple plan for their wedding day?
Now it begins right from that initial phone call. Once I've talked to a couple, sent them some information, maybe did a follow-up or two. Once they say, that's it, let's circle this on our calendar, go ahead and send out the agreement. Once I get the agreement retainer back, well, then I have a series of emails that they will get. That I have an online planner now. I think most everyone does, that they can go when they're ready, when time permits, that they'll go there, they'll put in like the names of the wedding parties, song selections, they can build a music list and things like that. So that starts right away. And then the series of emails that I send them will give them some different ideas. Like, I know one of the emails that goes out says something to the effect of, here's an idea. Rather than, some people will put either online or still a physical RSVP card, what, they say to their guests, what music would you like to have? What would you like to hear at our wedding? What songs? And I try to get them to go to a little bit different direction and say, when you word that, put it more such like, tell us what 3 songs will get you on the dance floor. Letting people know that what we're looking for here is dance songs, rather than people going, oh, I bet they've never heard of this group before. Yeah. Oh, here's a favorite song of mine. that's not a dance song. So I try to give them some pointers, guide them along, some toast tips, things like that. So that begins the process there. And then maybe a couple months out, then I reach out to them, ask them how they're doing on their online planner, what questions they may have. When could we get together and start really going over all of the details? And so then we'll set up that meeting where, and of course, that's a little different now too, is where years ago I would meet with everyone either in my home office or at the banquet hall that they were having that wedding at. But now it seems like my couples, they could live 2 blocks away from me and they want to do a Zoom call. And, you know, I first really kind of fought that, but I remember reading something from Alan Berg that said, you know, are you making it more difficult for your customers so it's easier for you type thing like that? And I said, that makes a good point. So if they want to do a Zoom call, we'll do a Zoom call type thing. But really to kind of start gathering that information then, and then even after we kind of go through that, then I may throw some different options out to them. Okay, now again, this is kind of how we do, you know, things here in our locale. But here's some other ideas, maybe a different order or some things I've seen different if they want to kind of incorporate in their wedding. And once we've kind of got everything set the way or they want, then I'll put together a planner. I will send to them, how does this look? Any changes, are the wedding party matchups correct? And things like that, until we can really get to see just how they want everything to flow for their wedding day. And from that point, then I'll reach out to at least the banquet manager, maybe sometimes the photographer if I don't know the photographers that I'm working with. But being in a small community, I know pretty much all of the vendors here. So I'll reach out at least to the banquet management and say, hey, this is kind of what I have for Madison and, you know, Dimitri's wedding. You know, does that match your schedule? You know, what time could I get in and get things set up? And then if there's anything, I still try to follow the banquet hall's kind of timeline. If they have something different, I always believe it's their house, their rules. And so if we need to adjust, and of course, then I let the bride and groom know and things like that. I just really believe that come wedding day, the bride and groom shouldn't have to worry about anything. That's their turn now to enjoy their day, to visit with their family and their friends. It's really up to the wedding professionals that are there to work with one another to make sure everything flows just as easy as, you know, a grease sliding board or something like that. So we can really make it a great experience for everyone that's there.
So it sounds to me as though you're saying that you make it so that the bride and groom know who, what, when, where, why, how everything is going to occur before they even arrive at the wedding. And if there's any changes that need to take place, or if there's any behind the scenes delays or situations, you're just going to deal with it, and they don't even really need to know about it unless it's absolutely necessary. Am I right?
Yes.
In that regard.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
I'm listening to you and I'm going, holy cow, that's a lot of time invested in putting together this 1 4 or 5 hour event. So how many hours do you say that you put into prep? Not the actual performance time, just in the prep.
I'm thinking it's like 20 hours. Yeah, I tried to sit down, this is probably some years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, and just trying to add it in and what I've spent. And which is kind of funny that you'd say that, Ron, because of course I have relatives that will say to me, yeah, it must be nice when you only have to work 1 day a week. And yeah, and I try to tell them, well, you know what? It's what I do Monday through Friday that keeps me working every week, type thing. And they don't see that end of it. They just feel somebody calls you up, says, can you do my wedding? We're like, sure. What songs you want? I'll see you that Saturday type thing. And that's it. But it's far beyond that.
You quoted someone in your book. And I'm mentioning your book again, Mike. So in your book, it says, and I saw this as I was prepping for our conversation today, and this is a quote from the guy that put together the B2B organization. I believe his last name is pronounced Meisner.
Yes.
Ivan Meisner. And I'm quoting, people don't care what you know until they know you care. And really, to me, that's something that that's what you're describing is that I'm of the belief that people will buy from those individuals who genuinely show an interest in them, and in this case also in their event. And that's why you invest so much time in helping them prepare for this, because that way, especially when you get to the event, you don't have to worry about a trust factor at that point. No matter what happens, they're going to know that you've got everything under control simply because you took the time, you invested the time to make sure that they were well aware of everything, not only of the timeline, but of other possibilities of ways of doing things at their event. Would you say that's true?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, again, that going back to the early days, that is where the difference was, where I understood that they're not just hiring someone to come in and play music. They didn't realize that themselves yet. They want someone to come in that cares just as much about their wedding day as they do. That's really what I think people want, even though they may sometimes don't realize that, but that's really what they want there for their wedding day.
Right. I agree. So let's talk. Okay, so let's jump a little bit ahead to I'm going to ask you to look into your crystal ball. Do you have a crystal ball anywhere around that house?
Right in front of me. Yes.
Right in front of me. Good. All right. So what I want you to do is I want you to look in your crystal ball. Let's just take a minute. Let's just make this a quick minute. How do you see the future of wedding planning for DJs now coming into the market? What does that look like to you? Now, keeping in mind, you've been in the business for a while. How do you think it's going to be, let's say 5 years, 10 years from now?
I really worry about where it's going. There's so many things on the technology end that I think are going to affect things. One of them has already begun to affect at least my business, where the Spotify list, the music on the phone, people will just, okay, I've got you hired for my wedding and I made my Spotify list. And that's what they believe that we do is, we get there and we can, introduce the wedding party, make those announcements, and then just go to their Spotify list and it'll be a rock star party. What those people don't realize is sometimes what they like to listen to on that Spotify list while they're driving from Chicago to Omaha or something, and what people will dance to isn't always the same thing. And I've tried to let our couples know that, and also that, with our software, we arrange songs. This is a line that I use all the time, is like, as DJs, we don't play music. As odd as that sounds, we program it. It's either matched by genres or by BPM, or some people do by keys, but there is kind of an order that it's put into. And I think with the Spotify list, with the instant request with people coming up with their phone, hey, can you play Traveling Soldier by the Dixie Chicks next? No one's going to dance to the Traveling Soldier by the Dixie Chicks type thing. So I see that as a real problem coming up in the future. The artificial intelligence, I don't know enough about that to see. I know that there's some fear of that kind of coming into the market, that people will just be able to have this artificial intelligence and it'll take this playlist and it'll match to what the crowd is dancing to and things like that. I guess, I'll have to kind of see where that is. But I really believe that there's going to be less weddings, Ron. We've been watching this on our local front, and from like 2012, I want to say 11, 12, something like that. I think our peak in our area, in our county, was like they issued like 720 some wedding licenses back around that time. But now, as we've even passed the pandemic, we are probably just a little bit below 600, which doesn't sound like a lot, but by percentage it is. We've had some local schools close here. They're talking about taking 2 of our middle schools and combining into one here, because we can see that the population growth has kind of changed. The baby boomers are gone. I just think that there's going to be less weddings to choose from. And so you're really going to have to stand out if you want to get your share of the market coming up in the next few years.
Yeah, I can see your point. I think that, a lot of couples maybe, rather than spending the money on the extravagance of a wedding, they're spending it on a house, or some of them are starting a family before they ever get married, so they have that to contend with as well. So, yeah, and it's funny, Mike. Years ago, I envisioned that through Wi-Fi and such that we'd be able to DJ a wedding without even being there.
Mm-hmm.
Be able to, you could, hook up cameras or whatever. You could see the dance floor, and you could, somehow you could do 2 or 3 parties at one time simply through Wi-Fi.
Mm-hmm.
You could maybe set up, different, and maybe even play different genres at each of those 3 parties, because, you're watching the dance floor at each, but that didn't come to be. So I'm not much of a naysayer myself. So, and I'm glad it didn't come to be, because I can't imagine trying to juggle all that. So, greatest advice coming I'm putting you on the spot, because this is one we did not talk about in advance. Greatest advice for a DJ coming into this industry today. What would you tell them based on your years of experience? What would you say to them as far as greatest advice, and especially when it comes to weddings and wedding planning?
Oh, yeah, you are putting me on the spot. Actually, I'm going to go back a little bit and kind of, again, when we talked about Mark Farrell coming into the business and saying, you are worth more than the veggie tray type thing. I don't know if you saw this, but yesterday I put this out on my Facebook page. There was just recently, within the last 5 days, on the Knot, they put a question out on their Facebook page that said, as a guest, what do you remember most about the last weddings that you went to? And at the time that I looked, there was like 149 comments. And a majority of those comments, the entertainment was mentioned in there. So my advice would be is to remember that you are one of the most remembered aspects of people's weddings. And so take that seriously and do your homework and make yourself count.
And know that, to add to that, I would even say, know that couples, yeah, they want you to play music, but more importantly, they want their guests to have fun.
Yes.
And that doesn't necessarily always come through music. It's a matter of how you go about helping a couple make that day special. Mm-hmm. So, Mike, got to wrap this up. I'm already over time, but it's always a joy speaking to you. So, again, if you've not, in case you missed it, the way I see it, 25 year, stories and lessons learned from 25 years behind the turntables, /decks, /laptops, /cassette decks, all that stuff. You remember what was the DJ's favorite tool back in the day, especially with cassette tapes? It was a Bic pen.
Yes.
Put it there.
Yes.
When you were queuing, you had to have a Bic pen. If you didn't have a Bic pen, a key would sometimes work, and you felt lost if you forgot to bring your Bic pen with you. So, Mike, thank you so much for your time. It's always a joy. I know you're still writing for Disc Jockey News online as well. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So go check
Tuesday
out
musings. Yes.
Go check out his
Tuesdays. Yes.
Okay. Go check out his articles online as well. Thank you again, Mike, and to all of you. I'll see you some other time. Bye. All.